Needless to say, 2025 has been a rough year for aviation. And I must say, I take no pleasure in doing these kind of crash video reviews. But unfortunately today, June 12th, we had a 787 crash shortly after takeoff in India. So we are gonna talk about what we know. We're gonna go over some details. We're gonna watch the crash video. We're gonna review global aviation standards. How's it compared to the US? How does the rest of the world deal with safety when it comes to aviation? We're gonna talk about Boeing's past troubles and what this could possibly mean for them. And then we're gonna talk about my opinion and what some of the probable and possible causes could be from this. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, before we begin, obviously our hearts go out to the victims affected. Like, this is a terrible tragedy and this is just horrible. But let's be clear, these views are my own opinion and this is just a discussion, okay? The information is forthcoming. If there's one thing I've learned from these videos is that it takes time as I get information. Some information might be good, some information might be bad. So we're gonna continue to analyze this, and this is just what the information we have now. And remember, this is just initial observation. The news is out there right now making videos after videos, and this crash happened 4 hours ago. So I figured this is my opinion as a professional commercial pilot, just sharing my information with you, and that's it. I'm not passing blame, nothing like that. Also, if you like these videos, I don't do crash videos all the time, but if you want big events, you can like and subscribe because I will cover major accidents like this. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the video. All right, so what we know, as I said, I just woke up. This crash happened about 1 p.m., June 12th. This happened about 4 hours ago as I'm talking right now. This is the Boeing 787, the first ever fatal crash with the Boeing 787. We're going to talk a little bit about that because that is pretty wild. So it departed airport AMD in India en route to London Gatwick. I would try and pronounce that city name, but I'd probably get it wrong. They issued a Mayday call right after they took off, and then they crashed within apparently 5 minutes of takeoff. We have 242 souls on board, 230 passengers, 12 crew. Right now, when I first woke up, the fatalities confirmed was like 110 or 120. Now it's up to 204. And unfortunately, I think that number is going to continue to climb. We'll talk about this again in a little bit, but the reported max altitude was 625 feet. Something went seriously wrong here because to only get to 625 feet with takeoff, and then it landed, the gear was down, flaps were up. Very strange. And again, we'll cover that more in a second. The weather appeared to be good. It was 39 degrees Celsius, which is warm, but not unusual, especially for India. 8 knots, winds 260. So I don't know. I don't think weather had much of a factor. So let's go ahead and watch the video. Trigger warning. This is obviously could be disturbing for some people. I hate watching these videos. It's always, you watch a plane disappear in a video over the horizon, then you see the fireball and the odds of survival are very, very low for anyone on board. So I would be shocked if anyone on the plane survived, unfortunately, and I'm sure the fatalities on the ground is going to be very significant, but hopefully those will be kept to a minimum. As I said, that's tough to watch. The first thing I noticed, though, and we'll get into this more, is it was a complete controlled descent into the ground. It looks as if almost both engines were out. I couldn't hear enough audio, but it wasn't like an unstable, like a dive like you see sometimes or something. That plane was lifted, going in. Clearly looks like the pilots were in control of that, trying to dive in there. I mean, I think the data showed it landed when the last data was at 126 knots. Which I don't know, that could have been data recorded after it crashed in the last submission as it started to slow down. So we're not sure, but it did look fairly slow, especially for not having flaps out. Okay, let's get into global aviation standards, USA versus other countries. Okay, the USA is the gold standard, right? Pilots have to have 1,500 hours. I saw, and I don't know if these reports are true, the captain had 8,000 hours, which is less than me as a first officer, which is still a decent amount of time, especially for other countries. But the FO only had 1,100 hours. Now, again, I'm not saying this had anything to do with the accident. I'm not saying this is even related. I'm just pointing out that in the United States, to even get to fly a commercial airline jet, you have to have 1,500 hours. And those rules changed about just over 10 years ago. So other countries, 250 hours. And by the way, that includes Europe. You can go in and get there and fly a jet. The safety in the US is taken so seriously, and the standards are so strict, and it's just ever evolving. The FAA works so hard. Other countries, we set the standard, right? But other countries haven't quite caught up there. And again, this may have nothing to do with it. It probably has nothing to do with the hours, because I could argue 1,100 hours of jet time is better than 1,500 hours in a banner towing where you're just going up and down the beach. So, quality of your hours matters a lot more. But, here in the US, if there's a safety problem, you can report it without punishment. You can feel safe to go, hey, I see a problem here. Other countries, there's political influence and there's problems like bringing it up. The HBO show, The Rehearsal, obviously the premise is that the first officers don't talk up to the captain. That was a problem in the United States back in like the 50s and 60s, where it was like, captain was God, you don't question him. We've moved away from that. But I think where Nathan in that show, the HBO documentary, had more of a point is other countries. Other countries are still kind of under that impression. I know, for example, you talk to pilots that are in Mexico, captain is God, right? And I'm sure they've made changes to try and come out of that, but I would assume that kind of problem, fear of speaking up, is going to be much more of a problem in other countries such as India. So it's improving, but still evolving. Okay, as I said, first fatal accident with a Boeing 787. And remember, Boeing has had a string of problems. They just settled a huge lawsuit for their MAX, the problems with the MAX and the MCAS regarding their 737s. And then, we had a string of accidents in 2023. Now, to be fair, not all of that was with Boeing, right? Some of that stuff could be faulty maintenance, other issues. We had tires falling off, emergency exit doors blowing off. We just had a string of problems. A lot of that is on Boeing, but since I don't want to get shot in the back of the head twice randomly or killed by Boeing, I will say that a lot of it is not on them too, right? If they make a plane, but the airline doesn't do the safety maintenance, that's not Boeing's fault. But I will say, if this is Boeing's fault, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a problem. But again, there's a scenario where this is pilot error. This is a scenario where it's Boeing's fault. And this is a scenario where possibly it's neither, right? And I'll explain that more in a second. So again, I'm in my hotel, I'm going off the fly here, and I'm just giving you the initial information. As we get more, we're going to talk more about it, and we're going to get more in depth into some of this stuff. So let's go to the very last slide with my opinion, right? Possible issues. When I watched that video, it's very strange. The gear is down. So just so you know, the gear is down, but the flaps, as far as I can see, the flaps are retracted. The flaps are up, right? There's something strange going on here, because when you take off on an airline, the first thing the pilot says is once you say rotate and you pull back, right? As you pull back, within 5 seconds, the pilot monitoring, that's the pilot not flying, is going to call positive rate. The pilot flying goes gear up. So the first thing to go up when you take off is the gear. The flaps are actually the last thing. So I'm confused on if the gear stayed down, if it was a problem, or the fact that they got up high enough. But the thing is, the max altitude, they said, was 600 feet, okay? 600 feet should be enough to, I don't know, I'm assuming if you're a passenger, you probably realize this, but 600 feet taking off the ground might take maybe 4 or 5 seconds. By the time you rotate, when you finally get off and your wheels are off and you clear and you pull back, you're maybe 4 seconds, you're up at, 400 feet or 600 feet, maybe 5 or 6, but it's not much. You get up there quick, depending on your weight and, other factors. So the fact that they only made it to 600 feet, but then it looks like their gear. So I don't know if they got up, somehow got their flaps up, but that wouldn't make sense to me. If that's true, that their max altitude was only 625 feet, it would most pilots won't even start, usually it's the standards. You will not retract your flaps until you're at least 1,000 feet. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know if they put the flaps up really fast. I don't know if they put the gear up and then decided, oh, wait, we're going down. And put the gear back down. But so something strange. To me, this is, again, just speculation. I have no idea. But again, it beats the news, right? When they're just going to spit a bunch of nonsense. To me, here's what I see possible. A possible double engine failure. I see maybe a bird strike, right? We practice for bird strikes. Maybe this was solely, as far as my understanding, was the first time birds ever knocked out 2 engines at a low altitude. Most birds are always going to be at low altitude, obviously. But it was the first time a plane got taken down, lost 2 engines from birds. Maybe this was the second time, right? Sully got lucky and had the Hudson and put it down there. These people might have not been that lucky. So maybe if it's a bird strike, remember, that means that's not Boeing's fault. That's not pilot error. That's just worst case, like, oh my God, how did that happen? And maybe there needs to be new regulations on bird activity. So again, I don't know, but the way they controlled it down looks like they had just, like, somebody chopped the power and they were doing the best they could. Another one, this is a theory that's probably far out there, but remember, contaminated fuel, that's something we practice for. You know, when I was in the sim, you'd practice and you'd say, oh yeah, this airport was reporting, you know, we had a problem with an engine. With contaminated fuel, we recommend diverting immediately. So, you know, again, speculation and far out there, but like, I'm just trying to think of something that can cause right after takeoff to barely get anything. Like, what happened? I don't know. Did, you know, you leave the, I'm not, you know, I fly the 777. I don't fly the 787. I don't know. The fuel pumps were like turned off or like what? I literally cannot think of what could cause this besides both engines just quitting. And then you got to ask, how in the world did that happen? You know, it could have been a mechanical error. I don't know. Something shifted and something broke. You know, it could be faulty maintenance, right? In that case, that would be on Air India. That wouldn't be on Boeing. That wouldn't be on the pilots. Like, you know, so again, we're going to get these answers eventually, but that's the question is like there. You know, and that could be some of those external factors. If it was a bird strike or contaminated fuel, what, as a pilot, what are you supposed to do, right? You don't know what could happen. So that's what we have so far. I'll probably do an updated video. Let me know your thoughts. Any updates like there by the time I release this video, I'm sure there will be all this new information. So I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button if you got value. And again, let me know what you think in the comments. And until next time, stay safe.